This is the story of Aaron Purser Part 2. Upon gathering my senses back, I knew I had to act quickly once I regenerated and try to get out of here. Somehow God allowed me to regenerate fast and I snuck over to the wall and began to climb the wall. The wall was squishy and filled with flesh-eating bugs, spiders, disease, detritus, and every other such vile thing. It was not like dirt at all but more like a wall of living insects all tied together. There was no slime or guts of the bugs, they were like living hollow shells. As I grabbed handfuls to climb, there was nothing cool to the touch here, anywhere. When the wall was disturbed, it made a collaborative sound of screeching, and of bugs clicking together. I was terrified the creature would hear it and rip me from the wall. My hands went into the wall about to my elbow and the same with my feet to my knees. I just frantically grabbed and pulled each handful and stepped up until I reached the top. At the top, I looked around and saw the pit where I had been was next to another one just like it, and another, and on it went like this as far as I could see in every direction. Each pit was separated by about 3 feet of the same type of living ground, which was now pulling me back down. I saw there were thousands of pits just like this, perhaps hundreds of thousands. There could have been millions of people in these pits in every direction I turned. There were no screams of humans like I had expected, just the roaring laughter of the creatures. When one would laugh, others would join in as a congratulatory laugh. It was horribly unnerving to hear these blasphemous sounds. The pits were laid out as a grid, only connected by the 3 feet ground substance on all 4 sides. There were multiple volcanoes, all with massive rivers of lava coming down them. One was very close to me, so I began to run towards it as if I could somehow get out if I just got to the top of the volcano. There is no way out though, and the roof is thick and black from the smoke, and the only light is that of the fires, the pits, the rivers, and the tops of the volcanoes. It appeared the rivers flowed off into larger pools of fire, but it was so far and so dark it appeared as red lines out on the horizon. As I ran, I noticed a different style of a creature was flying around and dropping new arrivals into their assigned pits. These creatures were wire-like and thin, their wings were pointy like a bat's wings. These creatures' wingspans were between 10 to 20 feet and their bodies were about the size of a human. I could not see their faces, but like all the other things I saw, I know they are just as hideous. They flew around in circles and around in packs at times. They seemed to go up into the smoke to gather new souls and would come back and drop them in the pits. It was as if they were catching the souls as they were being dropped down. These two made hideous sounds as they dropped their souls into the pits. I paid them no mind and focused intensely on reaching the volcano. I ran as fast and as hard as I could. When I reached the base of the volcano, I was surprised at the density of the volcano as it was hard, unlike the grounds leading up to it. It was made of rock or likely basalt. The walls of the volcano were jagged, sharp, and hot. I quickly began to ascend the wall. As I got higher up, I could see the fire pool pits numbered far greater than I could originally see. I ascended higher towards the top, and I looked around again. Now I could see into the rivers of fire and could see there were many people in the rivers too. Scared, I began to ascend more quickly. Somehow I was detected, and from the corner of my left eye, I could see a large fireball and a plume of smoke coming up from under me, circling the volcano counterclockwise. When it came around the last corner, it was directly in front of me and there was a large angry face in the plume. The face could have been the size of half a football field. Through the fire and the smoke I could clearly see it was a large flying creature, and it yelled at me, "Don't you know who I am?" I did not speak back, not out of fear, but rather out of disdain. Although the voice was loud, it did not scare me or alarm me. I did not know who the creature was though. I looked away and tried to climb up some more and was instantly knocked with great force off the wall. I fell backward and down until I hit the river of fire and was instantly burning alive. The river was of thicker viscosity than the pits from before, and I was flailing to get out, but the river pulls you in, and again it is much thicker, so it is much harder to move. I was burning up and went under the river. My skin, eyes, guts, and every other part were burning and flowing around in front of me. I surfaced and instantly regenerated, and then the pain started over again. In the river, you regenerate much quicker, as once you surface you are still in the river, so you are kept in as much pain as possible. The river holds many souls, far more than in the pits where I had been. As I looked around, I could see other souls trying to do the breaststroke. When they would do one stroke, they would then flail around and die. Then when they came up for air, they would be a skull and some face and throat. The lava would pour out of their eyes, throat, and chest like a pitcher being poured out. By the time they hit the river again, they would be whole, only to repeat this process every 30 seconds or so. This part of hell is far worse, though it is all bad, in part because it is so painful and also because it happens so often. There is just no way out of the river once you're there. There are thousands upon hundreds of thousands of people in each river, possibly more, but it is very crowded. As we neared the bottom of the volcano, the river begins to level out and the flow becomes slower. At the base of the volcano, there are more of the pit-type creatures with their pitchforks. They were pushing people under who had come up for air. I watched them as they would push people under and their pitchforks would shake violently for a few seconds and then stop. When they stopped, the creature would belt out the hideous low growling laughter to his master and then fork another one under. Over and over this went all down the river. I was pushed under a few times and saw below the surface. The legs and bodies of the other souls in the river were thin, deteriorated, and burning with the oranges, reds, and blues of the flesh and muscles burning. Their guts were just trails of burning strings and were all around them. The people were not swimming through the river as much as they were just floating and trying to avoid being pushed under. Everyone in the river is weak, and again the pain is so much or they've been there so long that most can't or won't even flail around anymore. No one speaks, grunts, screams, or makes any sound. The only sounds in the river are bubbling, boiling, splashing, and the sounds of the creatures' bellowing laughter. After some time the river became narrower, perhaps even deeper, and began to meander back and forth to the left and right. At this point, the river was faster and the pit-style creatures were gone, but I could see another type of creature ahead on the river banks. These creatures were very tall in comparison to the others and were very thin. They were about twice the size of the others at about 20 feet tall. They were raspy and cackled when they laughed. They had gray skin and blue fire surrounded them as if they glowed. They had what appeared to be baseball bats or clubs with one spiked side. The bats were about 10 to 12 feet long. The people in front of me I could see were being hit each in the head by the creatures, then they would sink under the river only to surface again and quickly regenerate. This was the only time I heard any advisory voice, and it told me twice to stay in the middle. I quickly moved towards the middle of the river and could see the new line of creatures hitting the souls around me in the head. Their heads would crack open like melons, some would be hit by the curved side and others were hit by the spiked side which went through both sides of their heads. I could tell they could feel the full pain of each impact, and again knew they felt the pain going under all the way to regeneration. These beasts kept the same cackling laughter up as did the ones before them. Like the creatures before them, they needed no rest, no food, no sleep, and never took a break. They had only one purpose in existence: to make those fallen souls feel pain, forever. I was thankful that I passed through this zone without being hit. The eyes of those souls in this portion of the river were the same as the other parts, completely desolate, bleak, and abandoned from all things good. The souls in the river had the most hollow, distraught, hopeless eyes, as that seemed to say they knew they were here forever. We had finally left the tall creature section and the river became wider, and there were many more souls in this portion. Many were trying to do the breaststroke again and would come up and fling the lava around with their heads as they came up to regenerate. For some, the lava poured out of their eyes, noses, and mouths, and others would try to rise up and it would come out of their midsection, leaving a glowing red empty carcass. These would just fall back in to regenerate. The river went on like this for a while and was thick and slow. We came to a bend in the river and I saw what looked to be an opening to my left. I made my way to the opening, which was a collection of rocks in a circle formed like a window. Outside the window, I could see we were high up in a cave on a mountain looking out, and I saw blue skies and green trees below. I reached out to touch the window, and when I did, the window disappeared. It was back to the blackened wall, only illuminated by the river's flow. I was then pulled from the river and found myself back at the start of the river at the base of the volcano. I was so deeply saddened by this, it was as if part of my own soul had been left behind. I was scared now, that I may not be able to get out. I went the entire course of the river again and felt all the pain over and over again as I tried to swim or exit. I went through the 10-foot tall red creatures and was pushed under many times. I went through the 20-foot tall burning blue type creatures and stayed in the middle and was not hit. We got to the point in the river where it slowed way down, and I believe we were getting close to the large pool, which now seemed more like a blackened fire ocean than a pool. At this point, I could not take any more as I had been burned up and drowned in rivers of fire for too long. I had been yelled at by a demon and watched people falling from the sky into fire pits while flying creatures snatched them up in midair. I had seen the creature torturing souls in the river and others cracking heads open. I pleaded to God, "God, please get me out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. Please God, get me out of here." This is the end of part 2. Visit our channel for part 3.